have found some interest in this. I think first I'll explain to you what it is that we're doing, or that we're trying to do. You okay? I've decided that I want to get more involved in the company in a way that I haven't previously. And basically what it's about is trying to take my many years of living and learning and passing on whatever it is that I learned to you guys so you could have a better life. And the method I used was by listening to motivational recordings and keeping journals. But it's much more detailed than that, and I wanted those of you that have any interest in improving the quality of your life and your future to get some idea of what listening to these motivational recordings feel like and sound like. The problem with this particular one, as I understand it, I think we didn't listen to enough to really get into how it works. I'd like your reaction to what I just said in a few moments, but I think we didn't go far enough for the first session. But I'll hear what you have to say.
Oh, far enough into the recording, you mean?
Yeah.
Into the discs?
Yeah. I got the feeling that it was very, it was like having a menu without seeing what the food is.
Yeah, I accidentally went into the
Did you go further?
second.
Did
Yeah, because I
anybody
didn't
go
even
further than
realize that the first one was done.
recording?
I downloaded the two and I was 3/4 through the second one before I realized that I didn't have more left in the first one.
Well, unfortunately, it was given to me in a form where it's all in one one file. And so I can't tell where the first one ends and the second one begins because I've listened to this thing so many times that it just blended into one. But I did listen to it what I think is the beginning, 3 more times over the weekend because I wanted to see what you guys were hearing. I think that I am really qualified to try to introduce the idea of improving your life by this method because it's done enormous things for me. I think for those of you that don't know me very well, and some of you may know some of these things, I'll just take 1 second and give you an idea of why I think this is important as it has been in my life. I come from a very meager background, a very minor education, to put it mildly. I was very, very poor and very uneducated, and somehow I ended up doing quite well in my chosen profession. I think that I had some natural talents and a very strong desire to get ahead. I didn't know what ahead meant, but I knew I didn't want to be where I was. And when I chose court reporting, or it chose me, I instantly decided that I wanted to be the best that anybody could ever be at this in the world. That was my goal. And with my background, it would be quite a leap from where I started to ending up there. Well, somewhere along the line, I realized that although I was doing nicely for myself, I was a court reporter making a good deal of money. I was able to buy small, expensive things. And then one day I saw a man getting out of a limousine, and I decided I wanted the limousine, and why did he have it and I didn't? And I realized that he knew something that I didn't know, and I was going to find out what that was. And what I found out by searching was these inspirational, motivational recordings. I consider all the things that have happened to me in a positive way in the last 30 years because of them. All I did was listen to what they said. It's really simple. They tell you exactly what to think about, how to think about it, why to think about it, and it tests your resolve. And if you really want to learn how to become much more than you could imagine that you could be, and I'm the living example of it, believe me, do this. That's all there is to it. I could tell you all the things the tapes say because, the recordings say because I've listened to them 4 million times. And it's not just this set of recordings. There are many, many, many recordings that are about how to do almost anything you could think of. In fact, how to motivate yourself to be able to listen to this stuff. There are recordings about how to get yourself to listen. There are recordings about how to listen. There are recordings about whatever they talk about. And I personally have listened to maybe 400 or 500 of them. It was my inspiration to keep going when things got tough. And I mean to tell every one of you here that you're not even close to your potential. Not even close. Not even close until you learn how. Now here's a good example of what it means to learn how to achieve your own potential. I know Michael is not going to like this, but he decided he wanted to run a company and didn't really know how. So he went to this school. It's called Vistage or Visage or something like that. Vistage. And it teaches you how to be what he's become. He invested his time and his money because he had the desire and wanted to learn. It's the same thing, learning how to become more. You have to want to learn how, you have to delve into yourself. So without getting too wordy about this, I would like to change the subject now to you guys, not me. What I hope to do in the future is have everybody listen. Roughly every 2 weeks, we'll do something like this, or whoever's interested, and I hope to have an open forum about what you guys think you heard, what you feel about it, and any suggestions anybody might have. I know this stuff. I want to see if you guys want to know it and if you actually understand what it's all about, because it does get, is level after level of learning. It gets really deep, and it gets very painful because you have to examine into yourself so severely, but it's worth it. It's worth it because everybody here, everybody in this room can be really special if you want to be. Everybody watching wherever you are out there is included. It's just amazing what you could do if you have the motivation. So, anybody want to tell me what they feel about what they heard? Good.
I was just going to say, I think what you were saying before when you kind of opened up the meeting, I felt also that it was kind of a lot about, I guess, sort of setting up your mind mentally for the techniques and whatnot that I assume are going to be talked about a little bit further down. But I think, they were talking about self-expectancy and how if you believe it all kind of starts with belief and believing that you can be successful and that you will be, and setting up kind of your mind to be motivated in that direction. That was kind of what I got from it.
Anybody else?
I just, because I went too far without realizing it, I don't want to spoil what's
we could fill them in.
Coming up. But I actually, I was pleasantly surprised, because you and I have spoken about, nice that I would give it a try. And I see what you mean about it being dated, but I think that it's still, the ideas are very relevant, even though some of the references are dated. But I found that a lot of what it espouses are things that I have done and I found myself doing when then there have been results. It's a matter of really being able to lock into it, though, into the mindset and the whole idea of the self-image and really creative visualization is what a lot of it is. Sort of a little, field of dreams, if you build it, they will come kind of thing, too. You set yourself up for success and create that self-image and work on creating that self-image, then other things will fall in line. And I think that it's actually pretty valuable stuff, and I'm actually, I'm looking forward to continuing going in. I think that the second, I guess it was the second disc, does get into a lot more it's sort of specificity, but it's also, I guess it's just more illustrative of how to start really doing it, and it's really kind of cool. And this is jumping ahead. You guys haven't gotten it, but the robot, I don't know if you reread that part, but the judge and the robot. I found myself actually, this is how I realized I read too far ahead, because I was talking to Ron the other day, and I went, yeah, that part about the judge, and then he's like, wait a minute, what? And I had gotten too far. But I mean, there was some stuff that just,
listen to it.
It's really, because it wasn't what you were supposed to listen to for today, but it's really resonating with me as having examples in my own life where I see it, I know it works, and knowing that if I can really take this further, then it can probably.
You know what it is? It's, maybe this is happening to you. The very first time I heard this was a very long time ago, and I was in a lot of trouble, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know how to get on my own way. But I had an epiphany when I listened to this. It was like, oh, this is everything I want to think about, and this is everything I want to learn. So if you guys feel that, or are able to get yourself to feel that, and then just follow the bouncing ball, in 6 months from now, you won't believe what you've accomplished. For those of you that are in sales, this is a great motivator. There's nothing like it, boy. You could just. For those of you that are in ops, I guess if I was working here in ops now with my attitude, and I was 25 years old, my goal would be to become as valuable to this company as I could possibly be, so I'll see what I can become in the company, maybe the president, who knows? That's what my goal would be. And the rest of my time would be spent figuring out how to do that. And I would do it by listening to what they say here. Just saying become more doesn't mean anything. These recordings tell you how. It's almost like a religion. It's really amazing stuff. So, anybody else have any reaction? Sure.
Well, I took it even more into my personal life. Like, there was a part where it said people start to feel sick based on their mentality. Like, so if something bad happens to you, you take it personal, and then it starts to affect your whole life. Like, I'm sure if any of you have ever been in a fight in your relationship and everyone's kind of turning against you, you start to physically feel sick, and the next day you don't want to get out of bed, and then it takes over your whole mind, and then as soon as you switch it, you start to feel better. Once positive things start happening, it changes your mindset. And it said a whole thing about how people who say, "Oh, I always get a migraine at 4," get the migraine at 4, and
here it comes. There it is. Yeah.
And then I kind of put that into our calls. I know for Parish and I now making the X amount of calls a day and getting voicemails. But if you start to let it get to you, oh, it's going to be another voicemail, then the next person you talk to, it'll come across in your voice that you were not excited, so you have to, you are putting your own emotions in your head, basically.
Well, that's true. One of the things that these recordings stress is the power of the mind. I've spent endless hours listening to recordings about how the mind works, and just to give you a very stupid example, if you could picture holding a cut lemon and put it in your mouth and take a bite. If you can picture it, everybody gets this feeling. But there's no lemon. It's all here. It's all in your mind. So this self-fulfilling prophecy, which is what you're talking about, is so prevalent in humans. If you really get into this stuff and you start studying how people think and how you think, and you compare what you think to the way you'd like to think and all this kind of stuff, it's very interesting being a human. I could speak from looking back. You guys are all about the future, and what happened in the past just doesn't matter. Just doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what you're going to do about it now. And one of the problems that I think this might have come out in this particular recording, but I'm not sure. When we leave our house the first time, when you're 18 years old or however old, everything you've learned comes from your parents, and that's horrible. Just horrible. And then when you get into the real world, you have to face and make decisions all by yourself. And you have no experience for that. So you make bad decisions and keep going in that direction until something comes along to stop you from going in the wrong direction, which is this. This stops you from going in the wrong direction. Because if you take responsibility, which is what this will teach you, and you do what they say, you can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong. So everybody has a lot to learn about life, an awful lot. It's too bad that you can't take a 20 or 30 or 40-year-old person and put them in the head of a 70 or 80-year-old person for 5 minutes, so that you could see all the opportunity that you have if you use your brains. And your brains are not taught how to make yourself do all the things you want to do. The recordings do it. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts or feelings or?
Just wanted to see like what the groups, like what they thought about the part of the disc where it said that success is an individual thing. So basically, you know, when they said that winners expect to win in advance. So when I heard that about, you know, how success is an individual thing, I guess I wanted to hear what you guys thought. Like, so as an individual, let's say you set a goal for yourself, and then you try to achieve it. So let's say if you don't achieve that goal, is it still? I mean, I guess the journey is still considered like a success, or is it, you know, you keep on going for that goal until you achieve it, until you conquer it. But also in terms of that goal, what if it's, you know, not attainable? So I guess, you know, what do you know? So when you hear, you know, success is an individual thing, does that mean that you're successful because you have achieved the goal that you set for yourself, or you did the best you can and the journey, what you learned?
I think it can be applied to many different levels of your life. You know, like David said, becoming the president of the company, I mean, that may not be everybody's aspirations. I think if you step back from each situation, you can apply some of this to any situation.
There's a line that he uses. He says, what the mind dwells upon, the body acts upon. And so if your mindset is a sort of that stretch beyond something that may or may not be attainable, it doesn't mean that the process to get there, if you have a positive, what I'm getting from this is if you keep a positive aspect and you keep that goal in mind, it is obtainable. You may never, it could be that you want to be president of the company and move yourself 20 years in order to obtain that. And whether that's attainable or not, it's that you have a mindset and a positive aspect and that gives you a clarity as to how to get to that path from where you are now to the goal that you want to obtain. And in 20 years, you'll know if you obtain it or not, but in the meantime, you create for yourself, and he uses this great line, a great positive self-expectancy,
Yeah.
which I thought was a very good outlook on where you want to get, because your mind gets in the way of what your physicality is going to do. It happens.
Susan?
This is actually just extrapolating a bit because I don't think this was in the. But
There's no rules. I'm
right.
making
No, but
them
it
up
just
right now.
it just kind of
Please don't
occurred to me
extrapolate.
as I was listening to that to what Randy was saying. That I think that the whole, you know, the first disc was the primary thing there. You know, the success and the goals was optimism, right? And I think that if you are optimistic and you approach things positively and then that allows you to be open and allows you to be open to the possibilities that come in that can then get you closer to whatever success is. And I think that sometimes what we initially envision as our goal of success may not be the way it ends up playing out, but it still ends up bringing you someplace where it would be considered success. It's just not necessarily that specific thing. You say, I want to be president of DFW. You may end up president
sure
of some
that's
other company.
success.
Well, you know what I mean.
Not a goal you might
But-
want to achieve.
Or, you know, or
Taking job applications.
I gave it up,
But-
and I'm sure he's ready to give it up.
well, Ron, there you go. But I think that it's the opening up to the possibilities that I think for me is really one of the keys that I've found that does, again, work with this kind of thinking when you allow yourself to just really go with it. And it's that with that comes recognizing opportunity that you might not see if you weren't open to it. And I think that's a really big part of this is, you know, being able to see something that you might not have seen as an opening or an opportunity that you can then either recognize and act on or turn into one.
I actually want to comment on Sid's point or the topic you were bringing up. And I thought a couple things come to mind. You know, there's this quote, maybe some of you who watch the History Channel may know it, Too Much American Restoration, but it's, you know, a Henry Ford quote, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. You know? Either way, you're right. And then the other, you know, the book that's outside right now, Think and Grow Rich, the premise of that book is whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. I think obviously then the question is, well, can you, if you wanted to jump up 20 feet, could you do that? And so I don't think that's really what they're saying. It's more realistic. But in the context of setting goals, here's the thing that I find to be interesting. So you set a goal, and you may not achieve it. But the thing is that the key thing is, are you learning and growing and improving in that process? And if you're learning and growing and improving in that process, what's happening is you're building the blocks of belief. And as you create the building blocks of belief that you can do it, let's use the context of sales here. If the goal is to do $1 million in gross profit a year, that for you might at the moment not seem so realistic. Maybe for Susan it does seem pretty realistic, but it's taken years of building the blocks and getting there to build up her self-expectancy that can happen. You're not there yet, but you could be if you start setting littler goals, and then each time you're building blocks, and obviously the higher you set it, the better in the sense of then you really have to expand your thoughts on what it will take to get there. And what listening to all this does is it really helps you think of in the context of, oh, I didn't know I could think of it at those angles, these different ways, and many of us probably aren't aware of what actually is possible and or even how to do it.
I think the goal is, I mean, everything Michael's saying is correct. I think the goal of this meeting is to get you interested in this type of learning. Not so much how to do it now and what it'll achieve, because that's what the recordings are about. It's just, do you want to improve yourself, make yourself happier, make yourself closer to fully actualized? Do you want to succeed beyond your wildest dreams? Do you want to really get to know yourself? Do you want to be able to feel free to, let's call it, speak off the cuff without any worry about what you say? Because everything you say is true. And that's really, really hard. And especially when you're young, everything's a secret, I guess. I don't know who's dating or whatever. Do young people think
Not
about
with
these
social
days?
media.
What?
Not with social media.
No, all right, you know. I skipped a few years. I think, I mean, well, how do you guys feel? Does anybody know that they don't want to get involved in this kind of learning?
I can say I've been reading books like this for a few years. I have a different, I guess, outlook on it. or I can say if this is new to everyone, to anyone. When I initially read things like this, you first get this surge of happiness, like this is so awesome, I can do it. But then nothing really changes because no change is going to be immediate, and then you kind of feel really bad. But then you have to realize that this is it. The way you are right now is not something that was overnight. It took your whole life to create where you are right now. And if you're trying to retrain the way you think, it's not going to happen in one day. So it takes everything you read or listen to on these tapes may seem like all things that you know, but if you're just surrounding yourself by this thought, you're more likely to start thinking this way. And it's kind of like what Sarah was talking about. If one bad thing happens, the next bad thing happens. When people saying they're having a bad day, like when you wake up in the morning and you stub your toe, you're already upset, and then it's more likely because you're having negative thoughts that something else negative is going to happen. So if you're able to try to, I feel like what these recordings can't help with is you kind of catching yourself before you spiral into something else.
That's absolutely right.
I was going to say, there's a book that I read a while back. My brother struggles with depression, so I read this book called The Mindful Way Out of Depression, and they talk a lot about how when you think in a negative way, the more you do that, you keep reinforcing it, and you keep reinforcing these neurological, pathways. And when you start to think positively, you start to build those pathways. So it's like, it's just like you said, you think negative thoughts, and your brain just kind of goes down that route.
And it is true for people who think, oh, well, just think positive, but that's like a load of crap. That's not going to change my life. But there are actual studies out there that show that even just like, for example, talk therapy actually does chemical changes in your brain to open up new pathways. So one thing I asked when I had my own patients with depression is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And people with depression or schizophrenia, for that matter, they can't envision a future. And so it may seem like a simple question, but if someone can't answer, it really doesn't have a vision of where you might want to be in 5 years, that it brought me back to the recordings, because I don't know the exact quote, but it was more a winner plans, and if you don't plan, you're planning to, maybe someone help me with it. It said like, if you don't plan, you're planning for failure. Yeah, and if you are planning, you're planning something, and that Sid reminded me of that. In terms of goals, it's not even necessarily attaining the goal. It's you're planning on doing something, because if you don't plan, you could sit and watch TV and kind of weather away.
And it's like Mike said, you learn too. Yeah, you learn about it and you don't look back, you look forward.
Right, and moving forward is such a big part of any of this and any kind of success, even if you're moving forward and you don't necessarily, again, just to belabor the point, you don't hit the goal that you were shooting for, but you've moved forward and you're somewhere else, someplace you didn't even imagine you could be. You're like, oh my God, look at this, and it's because you did allow yourself to propel and follow that kind of.
I just want to, one of Kristen, something you said that I think is really insightful is this stuff doesn't happen overnight. I mean, for some of you, if you're really spectacular and your learning curve is far superior to most of us, it might, but for most of us it's a process, and that's the importance of the repetition of doing it over and over, and for a while it probably would, as Chris said, think positive stuff, just I don't buy it, but as you start to dive into different tape series or books and different stuff, there's so many different angles to approach this, and the amount of information is extraordinary in terms of what all of us don't know about this. But as you start to learn more and more and more, it starts to become part of you, and you actually transform. But it's a process, and the process is years, not days, not weeks, years. But you gotta start somewhere.
I like how it said from going, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to try and change this, like take try and like later out of your vocabulary and say like I will do this, because once you say try, you're leaving an option to back out. And I feel like even like with like silly situations like with your friends who, like, my friends don't live here anymore, they're like, oh, I'm going to try and come visit. As soon as they say they're going to try, I know they're not going to come see me,
It's one of my least favorite words.
Yeah.
that, I hate that word.
Yeah, because you know they're basically just trying to, well, make you feel good, and with the option to walk away.
I mean, we discussed with our whole Yoda thing, do or do not, there is no try. Yoda. That is one of the
Could I be
most
honest with you?
brilliant
Right.
lines. No lie.
Right. Could I be honest with you?
Well,
You're not going to
but-
believe this, but that's
I
right.
think the easiest exercise to just notice, because I think people are negative without thinking they're being negative, and the best thing that I got from the beginning set of these tapes is just to start trying to catch yourself. So if you tell someone, don't slam that door, that's actually really negative, and the other person's reaction is like, oh, well, I want to slam the door now, or you're already thinking of a door slamming.
Kids
But,
want things
yeah, you want to be like, oh, yeah.
Negative path.
But if you could say to this person, oh, can you close the door like lightly, gently?
You get a different
You
reaction.
get a totally different reaction, and you don't even notice that you're being negative. So at least that's what I did for myself off of a book, off of a suggestion of another book I read. That if you could just start catching yourself, just how many times a day you're saying don't or saying the negative instead of what you really want to happen, it just shows like a turning point for you to just start saying things that you want to occur instead of focusing on the things you don't want to occur.
You know, I just want to tell you one thing, because there's so many tricks that these tapes teach you. Years ago, I was rather depressed because I was going through a lot of stuff, and I knew I wanted to be happy. I couldn't remember to be happy. So I wrote a note, be happy, and I put it in my wallet because I knew I'd take my wallet out 3 or 4 times a day to get my credit card, and I would see, be happy. So I actually had a chance of at least changing my mood, because you don't remember what you want to be unless you get involved in all this kind of stuff. And this, by the way, this is combined, as you'll see even further listening, with keeping a journal. Probably I've mentioned journals to most of you, and I'm not going to get into it now, but the combination of what you get from hearing this stuff and then testing yourself in your journal keeps you honest. And the whole goal here, the whole goal, is to learn to be actually responsible for yourself. Actually, really. Most, my guess is everybody in this room thinks they are, and probably, I don't think anybody is. Not really. Not
Does
really.
anybody want to take a shot at what that means? To be responsible for yourself?
Anybody know?
100% of the time you blame yourself for what's gone wrong instead of 99% of the time.
What might be the
There's always
positive?
an
What might be
instance.
the positive way of putting that?
Right. You're right.
You control.
You control.
You're the only one who controls.
Right.
what
Yeah, you have
happens.
100% control of your life, your decisions, whatever you want to do. It's, it's on you.
It's up to you.
And do most of us do that?
No,
It's easy to point a finger.
actually, sometimes we just kind of rely on external factors or things to happen, so then you can move on. And it's really sometimes to realize that you have control of your life, so you don't have to wait for external
It's actually
things
scary
to happen.
realize that. It's
Hmm?
much easier to
Wait and
not
see.
realize that.
Correct.
Well, did this group, this tape that you listened to, did it get into the fear factor and the desire factor?
Yeah, very
The
little.
motivators?
Single best one.
Yeah, not
Well,
much.
there
yeah.
it is.
Yeah,
Those
sometimes
are the two main motivators, they said.
The two great motivators, fear and desire.
Yeah.
Fear is only for
Fight and flight.
Fight.
Yeah.
But
You know, for you people who's in the sales department, may have noticed my tactic over a period of time is sometimes I try to scare you, sometimes I try to make you want it. It's trying to figure out what works. In the past, in my other companies, that it was always fear and desire. It's always that. It's always that. And I guess for all of us to find out what is our motivator is so important. And I'm so glad that you guys are interested in this, because in time to come, you'll notice enormous differences. Some of you in this room have achieved a certain amount of success, but I don't think anybody in this room is close to their potential. You're a bright bunch of people, young and energetic. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'll use Susan as an example. She came here not being in the position she's in now, and when we said to her, you can make a lot of money, my guess is you really couldn't really picture it.
Yeah, I could.
You could?
I didn't know how long it was going to take, but I could. I wouldn't have made a change if I didn't think of. Yeah.
And
But
what
no,
happens, that's
but
the
being
whole point.
specific about it is different though,
Right.
and that's what the difference is, which is something that the book focuses on, the specificity of visualizing the details and writing down
Sure.
what does it look like, what does it smell like, what all of that.
I also want to point out, though, that in this context, we're in an office environment. We're talking about maybe career and business success, but there's a lot more to this than that. This gets into your personal lives, your relationships with your family, your friends, if you want to do good in the world and make the world a better place and get involved in whatever you want to do. However, whatever success looks like to you, it doesn't necessarily need to be financial. There's a lot of different ways to be successful in this world, but ultimately, this gives you the tools to find what the path you want to go down and be great at it, whatever it might be.
I'll give you something to think about. It's kind of interesting. You all know my age. This morning, on the way, before I came here, I was trying to inspire myself about doing this, and I decided to read one of my older journals. And it was from 1983. Could you imagine reading something that you did, was it 50 years ago or something?
Can't imagine being alive.
I wasn't even a thought yet. Wasn't a thought.
But that's not the point. The point is,
It's about
how you think at a certain time. I think the way you think changes frequently,
oh yeah.
and
Well, if you
it's a
grow,
progression.
it does.
And if you learn, this is what these tapes are. They teach you how to learn how to think. It's all. This is such brainwashing, but in a positive way. And nobody really knows how to do this on their own. You just don't know how to do it. Go to school if you want to be a mechanic and learn how to do it, and then practice. That's what you got to do. So it's astonishing to me to read some of my old journals, maybe from 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 5 weeks ago, and see how irrelevant all that stuff is now. And this is part of what you learn. Most things don't matter. Most of it just doesn't matter. The things that are so important today, the things that are really important today, really, in 10, 15 years, I promise you, you may not even remember. Not even just don't even remember it happened. And so it becomes very, very important in my mind. This is my mission. This is what I've decided to do in the company before I leave, because I'm not going to do this forever. I'm already a few years ahead of where I thought I'd be. But I feel like I have learned a lot about how to succeed. And I'd like to pass it on because I think it really will be very helpful to those of you that get involved in it. When you get involved in journaling and seeing what that's all about, it's so revealing. And if you really want to get involved and learn about yourself, get into therapy. I also did 20 years of therapy. And imagine group therapy. You've probably experienced this, where you're in a group like this and everybody's attacking you. You're lying about this, you're lying. It becomes so revealing. And the goal is here with this to do it for yourself, so you don't have to go through that torture. But it is a great experience. If you guys feel damaged when someone criticizes you, I think you're looking at it the wrong way. You probably should thank them, because who here doesn't want to know something that they're doing that they shouldn't want to do, so they can stop doing it. And most people just ignore it because they don't want to be frank with you, for all the social reasons. All the social reasons are ridiculous. They're ridiculous. The world's ridiculous. The whole thing is crazy, but it works. But the idea is to figure out how to navigate it the best way possible. Okay, any more thoughts, reactions? Who that? Who?
It's Hillary.
Hillary, you're unusually quiet.
She's mad a little bit.
I'm listening. I'm soaking it in.
Good, good. All right. So,
Actually, I do have a question
yeah.
for you, David. When you read your journal from 1983, is that what you said?
Well, I don't know. Some of you like that. They're
Well,
rules.
anyway, I mean, doesn't really matter. The point, the question is still like, so you read it and you sort of thought to yourself how that stuff wasn't really relevant to you anymore. Do you mean? I mean, I'm curious. Is it not relevant because there are goals that you met, or is it not relevant because it's just not important to you anymore? They're no longer goals.
The second.
For whatever reason.
The second. They're not important anymore. You know, this is a bad example, but getting divorced. If anybody has ever been divorced or knows someone that's been divorced, it's a traumatic experience. It just messes up your life. Something unbelievable for years. Married children for a long time. And I don't even remember it anymore. I just don't remember it. I mean, vaguely. Yeah, there were problems with my ex-wife. My son was young, stuff like that, but no details. Who remembers? You know, you think you guys are going to remember this ever? None of you in 20 years from now, I guarantee you, none of you will remember this, because I've had this done to me, big things. Here's a good one. One day, years ago, when I was married to my first wife, and we were very young, she had a cousin who was the head of, the editor of Scientific America. Real smart guy, and I was very impressed. I didn't know any smart people. And I met him one night, and we were talking, and he told me that he was a poker player, in addition to being a professor and so on. And he told me how he played poker and made a lot of money. And he said, because I learned how to do it, I studied poker, and I was very smart. So I was very impressed with him. I was very taken. He was the only smart person I ever met. And I decided I was going to become a poker player. So I did. I learned how to play poker. I read books, and I played and played and played, and I became actually quite good. About 10 years later, I saw him again, and I couldn't wait to tell him, you know what? I'm a poker player. So he said, oh, that's nice. I said, well, I'm a poker player because of you. And he said, what do you mean? Mm-hmm. And I repeated this story. He said, I don't play poker. I haven't figured that one out. So, wrong guy. It's a strange life, believe me. I have a ghost story. I won't tell you now, but I saw a ghost. I don't know if I'm answering. I don't even know what you asked, Hillary. What did you ask?
Well, it's like when I'm
just pleading thought.
I've opened up a journal and just a random page, and I'll find a story of where I thought like my life was over, especially being a dramatic teenager. And I'm like, and it's just like, oh my god, I don't even remember this at all. And I remember I probably was flipping out about, I don't know, something that it was like I thought my life was at a halt, and nothing would ever be the same again. And it's just funny to look back and say this meant so much to me then, and I don't even remember it now. So
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, to bring it into your everyday life, and you could face problems like this may seem like a big one now, but later I won't remember it.
Well, you know, let me tell you one more story about today reading my journal. Another section of a different journal. This is quite a coincidence. I was writing to myself how proud I am of myself because I've been motivating the sales force, and they're doing great. Business is unbelievable. That was 20 years ago. But I'm writing to myself and telling myself, you're doing great. You know, keep doing this. And look how it's working. And that's what this is all about. It really works if you start learning to learn how to be a human. Not the bullshit that your parents and society has taught you. Because that's mostly negative. It's mostly, I can't do it, you know. I think I've told some of you, there's this thing about a gremlin, you know, the gremlin on your shoulder that says you can't do it, you can't do it. One of the recordings that we'll probably recommend to you is about the gremlin. And it's a very significant thing.
Taming your gremlin.
Taming your gremlin. The gremlin's a tough guy, but we've all got him. And by the way, I wanted to talk about what you said before about if you run a race and you don't make it to the end or something like that. I think every single thing that you try to do that you fail at is great. Everything. And besides, back to the example of working very hard and achieving becoming president of the company someday. The working very hard is the fun part. Becoming president may not be what you think. You know, it's really, I mean, my best times in my life have been when I've been trying really hard to do something difficult, not achieving it. It's really trying to discipline myself to keep working every day, do all the things, keep happy, make all the people inspired, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you know, I've been doing it all my life. And in fact, just before we came here, I discovered that all my notes on this meeting today were not on my computer, Williams. So, like 5 minutes before this meeting, I found that all my preparation was gone. It's not there. You know, you get what you expect.
Thank you.
Williams, I'm trying to think of a positive way to spin that for you, but I'm coming up empty.
But then...
You didn't want to rely on his notes. That was really smart of you.
Yeah, here's the way I think, and this is the way you will think. That could have been a real problem, but the fun is solving it. You know, what do you do? This is a tough one. I mean, I had all my notes. I was all prepared, and now I have nothing. Well, I can either crash or figure out a way to make it better. And that's what you guys will learn. You always can make it better. All of the excuses.
Blamed Williams and canceled the meeting.
That's right. I mean, I didn't
You
want
could
to
really,
be here.
because half of the things that I've heard you say over the last 7 years, I heard in the first two discs.
That's what I learned.
Honestly.
That's
Yeah.
what I learned.
No, I know. It was clear. I heard your voice saying, you go in the direction of your most dominant thought. That was like, that's David, and then that's David, and that's David. And, this is where he got it all.
That's
Yeah.
exactly. If you
Yeah.
listen to enough of
So
these
you
things,
know all
you'll hear
of it.
everything I've ever said.
Yeah.
Because I listen. What I used to do is listen to these things. I listened 5, 6, 7 times because I had to speak in front of large groups about this, and it really got drummed into me. And the best part of it, the best part of speaking about this, is that you listen to yourself. When I'm talking now, I'm telling you, I'm giving you what I think is good advice, but I'm taking it myself. I'm realizing what I'm saying. And, I mean, my career goals are probably a little different than the rest of yours. So I'm just inspired about inspiring. That's all I want to do. I don't want to grow anymore. If I grow anymore, whatever. But, yeah, that's it. Imagine listening to this every day and then just repeating it in your own way. So I think it will help everybody. Okay, anybody else want to throw something in?
I watched this or listened to a little bit on Saturday, a little bit on Sunday. I don't know if anyone watched 60 Minutes this weekend.
Yeah, I saw some
With kids.
With the kids.
The Imposter?
Good stuff.
No.
Let's see
I'll
that.
try to find that clip and send it out maybe later tomorrow. But it was very similarly situated to this, and made me think of both things. But it was this group of this I don't want to ruin it, but it's a whole foundation, and ultimately the goal is to teach underprivileged, essentially, people who should, by all stretches of modern society, never believe that they should be able to achieve anything, teaching them a different way to think and behave and talk, where, if it's meant to be, it's up to me, and if they believe it, and they do everything that they can think of to achieve it, they likely will be able to achieve what they've set out for themselves. And these are folks that, go through this program and then, who were living on the street a year ago and are now being hired by Goldman Sachs and different companies like that, because they have the mindset that says that they can do these things. And it was really cool.
And they teach them, they build their confidence up by actually teaching both through the way to think, but also real technique in terms of real life stuff. And one of the things that I just thought was interesting was they teach them the importance of being on time. And the way it works
Yeah,
in the
that's what
school is you have basically, I think it's like 7 dings. You get seven chances. If you do whatever they rate is wrong, you're out. They literally kick you out of the school. This is a school that gives people the opportunity to go from probably living a life of crime and going to jail versus going to work for Goldman Sachs and becoming, super successful. So it's a pretty big deal for these kids to have the opportunity to be in this school, and they don't want to get kicked out. So what they teach them is, hey, in a job interview, you show up on time, no matter what. They said nobody cares about your parents, your family, the train was late, the car broke down, the dog ate. No one cares. You show up on time. Period. End of story. No excuses. Don't blame anything. And but that's the building blocks of getting the confidence to believe that you can do it. Because if you realize that type of thinking and that type of mindset, again, that's the building blocks. But combination of thinking and then it was fascinating to see how they built up these kids and taught them how to think, how to act, how to job interview and get them jobs in
But more than than just the skills to do it. If they didn't have the right mindset, there's no way they would.
Well, that's what they said. They were like, if you show up on time with the right mindset, the company does everything else. They teach you what you need to know, and they teach you the things you don't know. But if you come in with a positive attitude and a winning, psychological mindset, I thought that was cool too.
It was fascinating.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything before we end this? All right, I just want a couple of closing remarks. I've been watching much closer than I usually do what everybody in the company is doing and thinking, and I read the emails, and I think some of you are quite interesting, actually, and have a lot of potential. It would be nice for you to develop it to the highest it can be, and this is a very good time to start. If you do want to do this, it's a commitment, it's a lifestyle. Just start listening to this stuff, and when you get done with this group, listen to another one, and keep doing it, and do what it says, and we'll discuss it. My thought is to do this roughly every 2 weeks. I think that will give everybody enough time to listen to I don't see why in 2 weeks you can't listen to the whole thing. I mean, it's not that long. It probably runs 2 hours or something. So
each one's probably 45 minutes to an hour, so it's 4 or 5 hours.
Is it?
But over 2 weeks,
well, all right. You got, if you want to do it, do it.
I thought are we doing disc by disc or the whole
just
thing?
listen to the whole time.
We may amp up the first one was more of just an intro type.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you liked the idea of listening to this and you wanted to pursue it.
Yeah, that was one thought that I had, was that, even if you consider yourself a smart person and you listen to a little bit of it and then you're like, I don't need this, or it's something I've heard before, that's still a negative thought, because then it's the belief that if there's nothing more to learn.
Don't trouble me with the facts. I've got my mind made up.
Right.
But also, by the way, and you probably will hear some things you actually never have heard, but most of but your interpretation probably for the large person will be like, yeah, I've heard this before, and you think positively. Everyone knows that.
Right.
But this really walks you through actually getting you to take action, not just hearing it and knowing it, but living it. And it's, as he said, it's a positive brainwashing process.
It teaches you, like say for instance, you have a negative self-image, which an awful lot of people do. This will teach you step by step how to change it to a positive self-image, step by step. That's what it does. It takes all our negative thoughts and gives you a building block. And it's not just this tape, this recording. I mean, there are thousands of them. And each one does, this is the psychology of winning. There's also something called the psychology of achievement. And there are a lot of psychologies of, but there are other ones that have nothing to do with this. And, it's all about making yourself the best you could be, that's all. So my goal is to try to do this maybe in 2 weeks again. I guess those of you that remain interested should listen to the remainder of that program. And I don't think I'll be able to get involved in recommending another one because I'm not going to be here. By the way, I'm leaving, if everybody doesn't know, I'm leaving for a month tomorrow. So I wanted to get this thing going before I left, but I'll probably come back in 2 weeks from tonight to do this again for my trip, and hopefully you guys will be more invigorated and more knowledgeable about what this is all about, and depending upon the reaction I get to this will be how far I'll go. You can't go further than I'll go, because I'll do this till I'm satisfied that I have nothing left to offer, but you have to want it. And the last thing I want to mention is don't do any of this for me. Do it for you. If you don't want to do it, you're not going to be making any points if you do it for me, because I'll know right away, just from the way you talk, that you're just parroting what you've heard, but you're not living it. It's what you do that matters, not what you say. And I don't want anybody in this that's really not part of it, because I'm going to try my best to make you all see this and love it and live with it, and you have to want to be here. So hopefully everybody that comes back will be that kind of person and prepared to just get torn apart by all of us, because that's what it's about. Okay, so I hope this leads to a good life for all of you. That's it.
Thank you.
I like it.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.